starting with the next track. We have Raquel Eisman from Soteria talking about 365 Inspect.
Thank you. Hello everyone, how are you doing today?
Good.
Pretty quiet, lunch is setting in, I think. This is actually my first security conference, and thank you. I think BSides has set the bar very high with this view. I think it's all downhill from here. This is so beautiful. But my name's Raquel Eisman. I'm a security advisor at Soteria, a cybersecurity firm based out of Charleston. And today I'm going to present one of our community version tools, 365 Inspect. This is a tool that enables auto inspection of the Microsoft environment to look for vulnerabilities and provide recommendations for remediation. I came to Soteria from an IT operations role, and when I learned about this tool they were developing, I thought two things. First, I really wanted to be a part of the team that was developing this software. I thought it was really neat. And second, I thought, man, this tool would have been so nice to have all of those years as an admin managing 365 tenants. Talk a little more. So over the past few months, I've been working with the development team to help shape and test this software. And when we learned there was an opportunity to speak with you all today, we thought 365 Inspect would be great to go over with the BSides community in case it can help one of you or someone you know strengthen your Microsoft environment. So today I'm going to go over the makeup of the tool, its benefits. I'll do a short demonstration video on how to use the tool, and we'll look at some of the types of vulnerabilities it uncovers, and at the end I'll open it up to any questions you may have. So before I get into the tool itself, I wanted to give a little bit of background as to why we started developing this software. So Microsoft is one of the leading collaboration tenants in the market, and it's often prone to misconfigurations due to the sheer number of security settings. So leading collaborator, large volume of security settings, this is a treasure trove for attackers. If I'm an attacker and I can develop an exploit that's going to successfully breach 70% of companies versus an exploit that's only going to breach 30% of companies because they're utilizing different platforms, you better believe I'm going to see how many birds I can get with this one stone. And so Soteria realized that they were seeing the same type of incidents over all industries for all of their clients repeatedly occurring. And not only that, they realized that there were limited resources available to the public that provided no-cost assessments of these environments, which is why Soteria began developing 365 Inspect to assist organizations proactively identify these issues and help them mitigate their risk. 365 Inspect is an open source software available to everyone on GitHub. You could download it and run it today in a matter of minutes. You run one PowerShell command and it executes a set of inspectors. And an inspector is just our fancy name for a PowerShell script. There's 85 inspectors that query the tenants for misconfigurations in SharePoint, Azure, Exchange, and there's more. And these inspectors are looking for things like, how many global administrators do you have enabled in your tenant? Which mailboxes have external forwarding rules set on them? Do you have a policy that blocks malicious attachments? And I know what you're all thinking, Raquel, these are not groundbreaking vulnerabilities, and we know that. These are simple settings that many companies are missing the mark on, thus leaving them open to attackers exploiting them. Oop. How many inspectors are run in your environment is dependent on your tenant license level. So for instance, if you do not have Intune set up, the findings are not going to return any negative Intune values. And then at the end, you'll be provided with a report that's easy to read, easy to understand, that anyone can pick up and understand where the vulnerabilities are and how to remediate them. The tool usually takes less than an hour to run. It's dependent on the size of your environment. So if you have 10 users, it may take a couple minutes. If you have 10,000 users and mailboxes, it may take a couple hours. It does not make any changes within the environment. It's simply pulling information to provide you with a report. The report can be in JSON, HTML, CSV, whatever helps you best track your remediation steps. And my personal favorite part is that it doesn't just give you a list of problems and say, all right, here's your findings, go fix these. It gives you curated steps to resolve each one. So before running the tool, you'll need 3 key items. The first is an account enabled with the global and SharePoint administrator roles. This is due to the permissions that you'll need to query the tenant. Next, you'll need the tenant or organizational name. And lastly, you'll need to install a couple of PowerShell modules. And these modules ensure that you can connect to the Microsoft services. I know I mentioned 3, but if you do run this, you may want to get IT permission beforehand, before just willy-nilly running it in your environment. So I mentioned the tool is easy to use, and I want to demonstrate that with a video. Just to note, this video is fast-forwarded a bit, so I'm going to try not to sound like an auctioneer. But I do want to note that the video is not cut in any way. I wanted to show the entire process of running the tool from start to finish. Okay, so to navigate to the tool, we're going to go to GitHub and type in 365 inspect. You want to select the Soteria security repo. And first we want to set up our PowerShell environment to run the tool successfully. So we're going to run PowerShell as an administrator. And we need to set our execution policy. And next we want to go back to GitHub, and we're going to grab those install modules that I talked about earlier in the prereq slide. And while those are installing, we can go back and download the tool zip folder. So we can navigate back to GitHub, select code, and download zip. Once we're back in File Explorer, we want to extract all the contents of the folder. Going to move it to our C drive. Now we can navigate back to the terminal and locate the folder. Now we want to go back to GitHub underneath the usage section, and we're going to copy the execution script. We'll paste that in the terminal. And before we can run it, we need to make a few adjustments. So the first thing we're going to change is the authentication type. We're going to set that to MFA because that's what we have enabled on our global administrator account. This is extremely important due to the high level of privileges that are on the account. And next down here you can see we're setting our user principal name. This is the user account of the global administrator role that we have assigned. For the output path, we want to put in the path that we would like the report to reside in at the end. So for this example, we've just made a folder called report off the C drive. And lastly, you need to put in that organizational name, which is often just the domain name of the email address that you put in earlier. And then we're off and running. We started installing, making sure all those modules are good. Those are going through. And you're going to be prompted for those global administrator credentials each time you're connecting to a module. So we're putting in our username, our password, our MFA prompt. You may see that there's an error here. We did put that in on purpose. I promise there's nothing wrong with it. We just wanted to show that if it has an issue connecting to any of the modules, the report's still going to run. And at the end, there is an error log that you can help you troubleshoot if you do need any support. So we've connected to Azure, Exchange, we have Intune, it's going to show you the permissions that it needs to connect. And lastly, it's going to go through Microsoft Graph. By now, it's just an easy click with our credentials to log in. And now we've started in running those inspectors that we were talking about, and it gives you the inspector name of each one. This is a pretty small tenant, so it doesn't take that long, a couple minutes. It's already asking you, would you like to disconnect your session? Yes, we would today, because we're not going to run the report again. And it's done. Now we can take a look at the report. So we're going to go back to that output path we designated off the C drive called report. We can take a look. We're going to hit our HTML file. It's kind of hard to see, but this is our end product, which is, it shows all the inspectors that were run, all 85 of them. And out of the 85 inspectors, which ones pulled vulnerabilities? So this is our test tenant that we have set up with a couple findings in it. It shows that there were 34 vulnerabilities found out of the 85, and these are all sorted by their inherent risk. I just want to jump into one of these findings here to show that each one has clickable links with reference guides, and these guides could be logs, step-by-step tutorials, additional guidance from Microsoft on how to remediate these findings. And that's true for all of the findings here. They each have clickable links. And one last thing I wanted to show in the video before we jump into one of the findings a little deeper is that it also provides you with text files with additional information for each finding. So in this case, we have some external access policies that were separated out with the report. Here we have an example of one of the findings you may see in a report. And in this case, it's an improper number of global administrators. We see the returned value, which is the 8 user accounts that has this permission assigned, a description as to why this is an insecure practice. So in this case, more administrators equals more attack surface. The default value, which in this case Microsoft has set to 1 account. The expected value, which best practice dictates setting this threshold between 2 to 4 users depending on the size of your environment. I wanted to pause here to note that the default value and expected value were not originally in the report that Soteria created. These were contributions from GitHub members of the community that Soteria thought were awesome. They tested and put it into the report. I thought that was pretty neat to share. It also has the inherent risk of the findings. So if there are no controls put into place to mitigate this vulnerability, what is the natural risk of the finding? And risk ratings in this case range from informational to critical. The remediation steps, which for an improper number of global administrators is for the business to review the number of counts and determine which should continue in this role and which should be removed, keeping least privilege in mind. And maybe you decide that you need 10 global administrators to run your organization. You want to accept that risk. That's up to your discretion as to how you proceed. And the next time you run the report, there's an exclude flag you can put in to remove this inspector so you don't see it in the report next time. And lastly, like we went over in the video, there are some reference links that may provide you with additional guidance as to how to remediate these steps. On the next example here, I wanted to show one of those text files that we covered in the video. So for this finding, we're looking at mailboxes with forwarding rules to external recipients. And it says to see an associated text file with more information. And we didn't want to just list all of the rules in each report because that can get a little bit messy, so we've separated it out. And here we can see the mailbox, the rule name, and the external recipient it's forwarding to. And on our last example slide here, I just wanted to show a remediation that has actual step-by-step guidance in it. It's a little hard, but it's saying to click through to threat management and turn on a policy to block malicious attachments. And so anytime there's a remediation step that's between 2 to 4 steps, we put it right into the report. If it's a more lengthy process, that's when you would go to the references section here. The feedback we've received from members of the GitHub community and our clients has been immensely positive. And so we wanted to share this tool to help get the word out. As I was going through the slides, if you were thinking, man, I have a really good idea for an inspector or a way to improve the tool, download it, customize it, or contact us and let us know your thoughts. We do have a contribution guideline link on the GitHub site. If you'd like to make any inspectors or try to change the tool, we're open to any ideas. This is a living community tool that we hope you make your own. Are there any questions?